sure about.
Anybody? That's how I.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. That was a fun one. Thanks. Okay, let's see. Pose earning. Next one, we're gonna go with Frankie. All right, so we got 2 videos from Frankie, so we'll watch them back to back. Today is a short day. We don't have a whole lot of stuff to watch. So let's take a look. Okay, so the first one here. Okay, the second one. Okay. Who would like to go first? Who would like to take a stab at this one? Anybody?
I can go.
Go ahead, Caroline. What do you see?
So I noticed. So I think the first thing I noticed was the jump, or like not finishing the extension.
Okay, let's take a look.
Yeah, it does. Oh, it's okay.
Yeah.
And I think the one other thing I noticed was not resetting the feed for the split jerk. So I think he initiates the split jerk from where he lands in the clean.
Right. Not necessarily the strongest place. Okay.
And then
What do you see here in this receiving position?
could be a little lower. I'm not sure about the barbell position on the wrists. So I'm always a little in doubt of like where to advise that barbell to rest.
Mm-hmm.
And then slide. I don't know if shoulders look slightly like inactive. And then back, yeah.
Look at the forest, not the trees.
Forest, not the trees.
What I mean is you're looking at like these kind of narrow focus, but look at an overarching theme that you see here that's causing all of those things. When in doubt, start with the feet and then look at midline. So what do you think of his feet?
Narrow, like too much in line for the split jerk to be balanced. And then the back leg, it doesn't absorb like the weight. So back leg should be a little more bent to be upright.
And yes, back leg should be bent. What about the foot itself? Where should the foot be pointing? Oh, no! Ah! Where should the back foot be pointing?
Out. Heel should be pointed out.
Yep.
Now, like,
straight ahead. What about the front knee? Is it where you like it?
I don't know. Now I'm really doubting, like watching the trees and look at the forest.
Well, yeah, now we're looking. Well, so we're going back to the forest. We're going back to the trees right now. Yes, but I wanted to start you from the bottom, going. You'll see the forest when you look more towards the middle. But look at his knee. Where do we want the front knee to be?
Right over his, right over the ankles.
Yes. Is it that way?
No.
Why?
I think there's a slight angle on the shin, but I'm not sure if that's just the angle of the camera. It does look like the knee is a little forward.
It definitely is forward. And a lot of it has to do with him pushing off his back leg, and so it kind of pushes him forward, so that his knee is too far past his ankle.
Okay.
Now let's go back to the forest. What do you notice about his middle area?
Back is arched.
Yes. Basically, his whole system is like this.
Yeah.
Yeah, so his back leg is straight. He's looking up at the sky. His back is arched, and now his hands are way back here. So what I would like to see instead of this position, to be more there. And then sink down a little bit. So now everything is straight instead of being out like this. Okay?
So is that just the position of the back leg triggering like the cascade effect of everything else, or is
Not
one?
necessarily. I think there's some inflexibility that he might have. And Frankie, when you watch this archive, could you text me later and let me know? Like, is my suspicion is that this front hip is very tight. His hip flexors are really tight. A lot of times when you see the foot turn out, it's because the psoas is tight. And you also see that there's a very narrow stance. I think that often comes from this. And then he might have some upper thoracic flexibility challenges, so he's compensating by arching his back. You see also that instead of his hands going straight overhead like this into flexion, he's pushing out in front of him, which means he's probably tight here and in here. So that's just me from what I see right here. Those are the couple things that I notice. Cool. Good work, Caroline. Let's see. Ben says overarching. Yes. Liz says, also notice that when he extended, he brought his feet behind him in the air, which caused him to land with knees forward, I think. Yes, let's go back there. So when he comes off the ground, he does a little bit of a donkey kick, and so he pulls his feet up and back. See how they come behind him? This is also an indicator that he might not have hip flexors. So sometimes what happens is when people pull their foot up, the hamstrings do play a role in lifting the feet up, but you see how he lands kind of toesy too? So which tells me he might not have a hip flexor to pull his foot straight up and keep it flat. So when we talk about the squat, right, we talk about the squat being you pull your hip into flexion using your hip flexor, and you pull your knee into flexion with your hamstring. All right, so here, he's pulling his feet up with only hamstrings, and that's why his toes are getting left behind. And then when he lands, you see how his toes never come up in line with his heels? So a lot of times that happens when the hip flexor is not pulling the foot up, if that makes sense. So when you jump, you want to lift your feet up by lifting up with your hip flexors, bring your knees towards your chest and your heel towards your butt so you can land flat-footed. Okay, so he does end up jumping a little bit forward too, and we'll go back to that in just a second as to why that happens. But what do you notice about his knees now? Anybody? Go ahead, Liz. Open up.
They're forward. They're over his toe a lot.
Can you squat from here?
No.
No. So
I mean, you could squat on your toes.
it doesn't translate to a squat clean.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah.
Right. In my gym, I never would teach the power clean until I could see that the person was good at squat cleaning. And then I would introduce the power clean to them by saying, do that again, but don't squat as deep. So it should always look exactly the same coming up. So there's a video that I did a while back. I don't know if you guys saw this on Instagram, but let me see if I can find it. Can you see this screen, guys? Nod your head if you see my Instagram. Okay, cool. So it's under IGTV. Here it is. Okay. So that's this one. Welcome to part 3 of the series. Last week we looked at the clean deadlift and then a strict muscle. Most people were able to answer your warm up, able to jump. PVC pipe. Not that one. Sorry. You want this one maybe? Welcome to part 4 of this. After an athlete. Here you go. So watch this progression of power. After an athlete has shown me that they can do a squat clean properly. Power, power, power but lower, power but lower still. Not power anymore. But you notice how the movement pattern looks exactly the same. The only difference is the depth of the squat. So this is really common. What Frankie's doing is really common with CrossFitters is how their power clean looks very different from a squat clean. And so it doesn't really transfer. It should look exactly the same, but this landing position is very knees in, all the weight is on the inside edge of his foot, and there really isn't a way to squat here. All right, you guys all see that? Let's see. Now, why do you think that he jumps forward? Does anyone know? Did anyone see why he jumps forward?
I know like I tend to jump forward if the bar gets away from me. Like my lats stop pulling into me.
Okay, that is definitely a possibility. Let's watch his feet. Looks pretty good right now, yes? How about now? So good? Anyone notice the difference there? Caroline sees it. Ben, you see it? What's he doing?
He's counterbalancing, and it
Yeah,
gets
he's
worse.
counterbalancing. He's shifting back. His weight's shifting backwards into his there. You see it even more obviously now. You see how the right toe really comes up, and now the left toe is coming up even more. And then watch what happens. He's going to shift back to the front of his foot. So now he's all on his toes. And then he comes forward. I think it's a little more obvious on this one, the heavier one. Yeah, it's way more obvious. Watch this. Actually, it's not heavier. It's lighter. But here you go. Watch this. Watch his right foot especially. There. See how the weight shifted? Even more so there. And then he rolls back in. See how the right foot collapses in? And then he goes forward. Okay. He does, so this latter one looks a little bit better. He does keep the bar. Yeah, he keeps the bar close. Yeah, definitely. He does a good job of keeping the bar close. Doesn't really bump away from him. That's good. It pulled his shirt up. Okay. Now, what I did notice is though, okay, watch as he passes the knees. It's not as obvious here. Actually, I take it back. It's happening. Watch this. What do you see there? What's lifting the barbell right now? Anybody?
His back.
Is it? There we go.
Yeah, he's shrugging early right there. He started to shrug right there. So Ben saw it. He starts to shrug right there. And then Liz, yeah, he's lifting with his back right there. And you can see how his back arches it up. You see it more obviously on the heavier load here. Watch how he brings his chest up right there. See how his chest is coming up, but his legs aren't pushing anymore. So what we have is we have a lot of we call this hip driven lifting instead of pushing with the legs. And so he's got in general, a lot of horizontal movement. So everything is going towards the back right now. And now so towards the back, meaning behind him, because he's counterbalancing his weight to the back of his leg, to his heels. And then he lifts with his traps and his back to bring his chest up. And then he pulls himself under. Okay. The timing's pretty good here on the turnover. So that's good. Keeps his hook grip for a long time. Now, we just mentioned a whole bunch of things there, okay? So how am I going to triage this? What would you do first? What do you think I would do first? Go ahead, Ben.
You'd work on the feet and just make sure that he's pressing evenly through the ground.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What else?
Oh, you're saying what else?
Yeah, what else would I do? Do you think I would do?
Well, it depends on how much you want to give him this time, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I think something simple is in the dip of his jerk, he's going forward. So you could work on a vertical or just straight down with the dip. And that may help him from going forward.
I actually don't hate his dip. I think it's too deep. And I think that's why he goes forward. But look, if he just stopped here, it's not bad. He's a little bit too heelsy, but look, he's not really dipping too far forward. He loses it when he gets down there. And he just dips so low. See it? But from here to here, I don't hate it. Looks pretty
But
good.
then you would also correct his feet, like Caroline said, and not have him start from that wide position.
Yes. Okay, so let's break this down. Here's a couple things I would do. The first thing I would do is I would take away pulling from the floor for now. I wouldn't have him do a clean from the floor all the way. What I really want to see is I want to see some comfort in the clean and receiving it in a squatty shape. So I would say is if the workout calls for powers, I would say I want you to power, but receive the bar at parallel. That way you develop the sensation of pulling your body down under the bar. And so that now you're creating the same motor pattern because this is not the same as a squat. See how his hips are directly over his heels? In fact, they look like they're in front of his heels a little bit. Okay, so I want to get that so he becomes comfortable with that and he has options. Like whenever you power clean, the only time you should ever miss a power clean is because you squatted too deep. You guys have heard of weightlifters saying, was that power? Because they're asking their buddy, did I stop before I got below parallel? And that's where I would have him start. And I would have him do it from the high hang first, just because it keeps it simple. I would teach him though, like when he brings the bar up to the high hang, to practice just pressing to the floor and driving through and pushing with the legs instead of lifting with the back. I want him to feel his quads when he's pushing up. Think about squatting it up. So squat the bar up and then stand there and then let's do a high hang clean and pull into a parallel. Okay, so that's one thing for the pull. So I'm gonna break it down so he's only thinking about one thing at a time. I'm gonna have him stand up the bar, just think about loading the quads and pushing through the quads, and that's it. Fine. The next rep, when he goes to do the clean, he's just gonna jump and land and pull himself down to parallel, and that's the only thing I'm gonna have him practice, just landing in a squat. And then with the jerk, this jerk over here with a lighter weight looks better. Look at his knee position. It's still a little bit forward, but his back knee is bent, which I'm happy with. Okay. So one thing I would have him do maybe is let's just work on keeping the ribs down. You know, because I don't want him loading his low back. He kind of does everything with his low back. He lifts the bar from here to there with his low back. And then overhead, he's supporting with his low back. So I would just have him focus on landing this position and then pausing there and then finding his stuff. And before putting the bar down, just thinking about bringing the chin down, ribs down, and then make sure both knees are bent. And we'll start there. That's all I would have him do. There's a couple other things that I would polish off, but I don't want to give him too many things. So the first thing is, can you pull from the floor and push with the legs and not lift the back? That's step one. Then the clean, can we pull down into a parallel squat? And then for the jerk, let's just try to get the ribs in order. And that's how I would do it. So one thing to focus per rep. Does that make sense? Yeah, cool. I don't want to give him too much. I mean, we identified a whole lot of things, but this is why, you know, we'll look at it and then we'll triage and pick the ones we want to focus on first, and then we'll pick on the other things later. Sound good? Cool. Any questions on this one, guys? Nope?